Rachel, I've read about what happened to you. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for somehow finding the strength to talk about it. You know, we're all very appreciative of that. Thank you. How did you initially meet your abusive partner?
So I met my perpetrator through his sister who lived opposite me. And I always say, when people say, why do you go out with men like this? You don't go out with somebody that slaps you on a first date. They're genuinely charming. I always say they're like a chameleon and they'll morph into whatever you want. So you're going out with this guy for me under a false pretense that he was a decent guy. And that's how I first met him.
And what was he like at the beginning then?
Very charming, extremely funny. Used to make me laugh, which was quite nice. Because I do like having a laugh. And yeah, just a genuinely nice guy. Came with a bit of baggage. He told me about his family life as a child, which wasn't the best. And yeah, he was just a decent guy. So I thought.
And was there any early moments when you started thinking, that's a bit of a red flag, or that's made me feel a bit uncomfortable?
I think for me, had I have known more about healthy relationships, because I was 21 at the time, I was a single mum, didn't really know the red flags. I mean, looking now through professional lenses, they were so blatantly there. Had I have known, the control, saying, things like, oh, wouldn't a skirt, a bit longer be better? Why are you wearing fake suntan? Why are you putting them false eyelashes on? Things like that was the first sort of signs. But yeah, if I'd only have known.
Yeah, but as you say, you're 21, you're a kid, he's a charming guy, you're having a fun time. You just wouldn't think anything of it at all. When did things start to change for you?
So the first significant moment of abuse that I vividly remember was when I was 7 months pregnant with his child, and we had an argument, and he come bounding up the stairs. Bearing in mind, he was 6'7" and 22 stone. He was a bodybuilder with a 60-inch chest, and he ran into the bedroom and lifted me off the floor by my throat. And he told me later he let me go when my lips turned blue, and that was a significant moment for me of the abuse. But he fell on his knees, cried like a baby, begging for forgiveness. He don't know what come over him, and talking about stuff in his past. And I just thought I could fix him.
And you're pregnant as well, right? And you have another child as well to think about. How old was your other child at that point? They were.
So when I met Darren, my oldest Josh, he was 2 at the time. So he was only a couple of years old, a toddler.
And did the violence continue?
Yeah, I can remember another point when Jack was born, so that was my child with Darren, and another vivid moment. I can remember there was another argument in the house, and Darren grabbed me by my hair and somehow swung me round on the kitchen floor, which was carpet at the time, and I had a pair of loafers on, and it left like almost like black marks in the carpet, and I can remember being on the floor and seeing Jack watching what was going on. And it just, once you're in it, you're sort of in it and just constantly sort of trying to manage it as best you can.
Did you think about leaving?
Many times. Darren's words to me, though, was there's only one way out for you, and that's in a wooden box. Little did I know and found out later he was a serial perpetrator, which I wasn't aware of. And thankfully, after the events that unfolded in the end, Clare's Law was introduced then, which is great because, victims can do a search on their exes. But, there's so much that can be done to help and protect victims of abuse.
It's you mentioned Clare's Law there. It is actually really important for everyone watching the programme to know that that isn't a really important law passed. That means you can check up on people who've entered your life and your children's life in this way as well. He shot you, didn't he? What
Yeah.
happened on that day?
So I finally decided to leave on the 9th of July after him strangling me and slitting his wrist in front of Jack. And I can remember thinking at that point, if he's capable of doing that in front of our son, what else is he capable of doing? And that was when the light switch went off. And the fear of staying with Darren then became greater than the fear of leaving him. So I left him. For 6 weeks, he stalked me. Bombarded me with calls, text. They arrested him for the non-fatal strangulation, which thank God I helped. I was instrumental in getting that on the statute book. But he was charged with common assault, which he may as well have just been slapped on the wrist. So he was on bail, and then on the 19th of August 2011, it was around 2:20 in the afternoon, and I was working in my hairdresser's where I worked. And I can remember the shop going quite dark, and I can remember looking at the door to see what was blocking the sunlight, and I could see Darren pushing the door open and reaching in a bag and pulling out this sawn-off shotgun. And I don't know why. They say you fight, flight, fear, flop, friend. And I decided to run towards him and started battling with him for the gun. At that point, then I can remember being hit on the head with the gun and falling on the floor. And then just going into a fetal position and saying, think of Jack, think of Jack. And at that point, he pulled the trigger. The left leg took the first blast, and the second shot skimmed past my ear. Next thing, then he pounded me with kicks and stamps and stamped all over my head, all over my body. Next thing, he was gone, and later found hung in the evening.
I honestly don't know how you managed to tell this story with so much dignity. Can I say it almost feels like it's something that sort of make up. It's just so horrific, and I'm really sorry that this happened to you. The thing that kind of slightly breaks my heart really about your story is the story of Jack as well. I don't know if that's something that you feel comfortable in sharing.
Yeah, the tragedy in my story, Sophie, is my son Jack, because I was in hospital for almost 6 weeks recovering, and I came out of hospital on the Friday, and Jack took his life on the Monday. A 16-year-old boy who was, brought up in a toxic environment. And he is the tragedy in my case, and hence why my mess is my message, and I will do all I can to help others who find themselves in positions like I was in. When I do, campaign, and I do speak out quite openly and honestly about it, because at the end of the day, domestic abuse is everybody's business.
It's, just at the time when you would hope that you had found some safety for you and your family, something like that happens, and it's just appalling. And I think the message as well about how it's not, the children are victims in this as well, is so important. Do you welcome the news that there's going to be more money for survivors of domestic abuse and their children to try and find a safe new life?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, it is always the victim that tends to be leaving, that tends to be fleeing, that tends to be running, instead of, managing that perpetrator and holding them to account. And that could be on another programme. I've got so much to talk about, but focusing on what the government has done. It's amazing that they've done this. It's going to help so many victims, because we know if a victim cannot scrape £100 together, the likelihood of them leaving is very minimal. So it will go a long way to help those who find themselves in that financial position where they can't, scrape together some money to put down on rent or, some accommodation. So it is great.
I'd love to speak to you again. You're clearly a woman who, is on a bit of a mission. We need people like you in this world. So we'd love to speak to you again on the programme, if that's right. Thank you.
Thank you.